The very esteemed guest for today's episode is a woman who was born in 1931, who actually herself experienced escaping the Gestapo from the Holocaust. And she is someone that is more qualified than maybe anyone else to help answer this question of what it takes to live beyond patriarchal sex. And I'm really, really happy that Riane was willing to come and share her wisdom because she really is a true elder of her times. And to do it justice, there's quite a lot to know about Dr. Riane, so you can really get the caliber and quality of this incredible soul who has a body of work that has helped build and develop world views that could shape and change our future for the better. Her research has had an effect in many fields, including history, literature, philosophy, art, economics, psychology, sociology, education, human rights, organizational development, political science, and healthcare. Dr. Riane is a social systems scientist, a cultural historian, a futurist, an attorney, a consultant, a speaker, and an author, as well as the president for her organization, the Center for Partnership Systems. Riane is internationally known for her best-selling book, The Chalice and the Blade, Our History, Our Future, and her book on economics, The Real Wealth of Nations, Creating a Caring Economics, was hailed by Archbishop Desmond Tutu as a template for the better world that we have been so urgently seeking, and by Jane Goodall as a call to action. This information is from Dr. Riane's website, where it also says that she pioneered the expansion of human rights theory and action to include the majority of humanity, meaning women and children. Her research provides a new perspective on our past, present, and possibilities for the future, including a new social and political agenda for building a more humane and environmentally sustainable world. And I'll just pause there to say that uh, a way to summarize a bit of this is that Riane has deeply researched and developed models and systems that are relevant not only on a very large scale political, social, collective level, but also at the very, very personal relationship, family, parenting level also. And so Riane has received many honors, including honorary PhDs, the Nuclear Age Peace Leadership Award, the Feminist Pioneer Award, and inclusion in the award-winning book Great Peacemakers as one of the 20 leaders for world peace, alongside Mahatma Gandhi, Mother Teresa, and Martin Luther King. And so Dr. Riane, she describes the patriarchal paradigm that is referred to throughout this project for this podcast as the dominator model, the domination system. And the reason I didn't pick up that terminology for this podcast is because I wondered if that word in relation to sex could be easily misconstrued as, just a certain type of erotic experience of domination, submission. Although that is also relevant in what she's going to be talking about in this episode. And patriarchal sex could also be transactional sex, but then the sex workers might think that I'm talking about them. And so it became patriarchal sex as the terminology. Dr. Riane, of course, completely understands what that really means and where I'm coming from. And it seems that our understandings and philosophies are very, very congruent. And I did have the opportunity to tune into Dr. Riane's first book when I was pretty young. 17 years old, I would say. And it wasn't until much later that I read some of her other books, such as Sacred Pleasure, which I really, really recommend. And also her other books, and not all of them I have read yet myself. And so I'm really looking forward to that. And I think it's a beautiful gift to know that there's very generous on-demand, I believe, digital courses that you can get from the Center for Partnership Systems, Riane's organization, and very affordable ways to learn the approach that she has to share. And occasionally there are summits that come up, and Dr. Riane is still teaching at 94, which is absolutely incredible. And I was a little surprised to hear that her organization is in need of funding because there are just there is so much financial abundance in the world. And I can't think of many things more worthy of being funded than this incredible 35-year body of work that Dr. Riane Eisler has developed. And so if you can help her to get into touch with anyone that can support on a funding level, or another idea too is that if you have access, know anyone at some of the largest podcast platforms in the world, especially US based ones, then it's possible that Riane could come on herself and be able to share her wisdom while is she still available to do so. And so if you have any connections like that, please do get in touch with her or with myself, and I will pass it on. And so this is probably one of the most important episodes we will ever have on the podcast, particularly when it comes to the bigger picture worldview and how that links into the very personal, intimate relationship level. And maybe one of the things that I appreciate most of all about Dr. Riane is how connected she is in her consciousness. She's so aware of how all these worlds are so um, innately connected and can't be operating completely out of harmony with each other if we're to have yes, a harmonious world inside and outside. And so that level of connectivity, it seems like, of course, but actually it's not that common that someone has understanding that traverses all of these fields in such a level of expertise. So I'm looking forward to you really being able to experience Dr. Riane's wisdom because there is such a vast body of work that she has to share. We encapsulated it as best as we could, relevant to this podcast within an hour. But of course, there's still so much more to say. And so her books would be the place to go for more, as well as her courses. And I just hope you thoroughly enjoy this really special episode with Dr. Riane Eisler. Welcome to this provocative and heartfelt podcast, where patriarchy is defined as a paradigm that both men and women uphold in different ways. Here you get to listen in on genuine conversations between leaders from around the world to discover more mutual respect and less division, as well as more pleasure and love in your life. My name is Devashi Shakti, and you are warmly welcome to be part of these Beyond Patriarchal Sex conversations. Well, Riane, what an incredible pleasure it is to have you coming in to the Beyond Patriarchal Sex podcast. It hasn't even happened yet, and I already know that this might be the most important episode that will ever happen. And you are such a force, such a legend to me and to so many. And you have created bodies of work that are the most tremendous contribution to humanity. The legacy that you're leaving is literally extraordinary. So thank you so much for saying yes to coming and being in this conversation.
Well, I'm delighted to be with you. And I think that sex, which is the uh, subject of your work, is very important in human life. It's a very natural thing which has become something else, unfortunately.
Yes.
What I call domination rather than partnership-oriented cultures.
Yes, and let's get into that because there has been so many reactions to the name of this podcast. Some get it immediately, like yourself, and some have strong reactions because they think it's about being anti-man or something like that. But the whole approach is saying that actually, in the current times, both men and women are holding the paradigm of patriarchal sex as a co-creation. And so part of the objective of this is to define what patriarchal sex really is so that we don't recreate it unconsciously and we really get what it takes to live beyond it. So, if I were to have your incredible perspective weigh in on how would you describe or explain patriarchal sex and the paradigm of that?
Well, it was a funny thing. I will digress from your question for a moment, but then answer it. Um, after the Chalice and the Blade, for which I'm best known, came out, um, I promised another book after that. And what happened was very interesting. First a folder, then a box filled on our sexual relations.
Mm.
And I realized that this book was about sexuality in both domination and partnership oriented cultures and how it differs. And that leads to your question, and that's the book. It was called Sacred Pleasure. It is called Sacred Pleasure, Sex, Myth, and the Politics of the Body.
Hmm.
And because sex is such a ubiquitous, uh, natural human function, really, I thought that actually it was important to write about what you call patriarchal, I call domination,
Yes.
because it is more than a patriarchy. It isn't just fathers, who dominate, obviously. It is really, well, gender, we've been taught, is a quote, women's issue, is ancillary, and actually it's a key social, economic, family, and yes, sexual organizing principle.
Yes, yes. And at
And
this point, so many women have been uh, dominated with a patriarchal programming in themselves. And so it's such a co-creation at this point within the outer world power model and how that impacts the personal, intimate relationship space.
so I think that you're absolutely right to focus on this and to help uh, us think of what is patriarchal or dominator sex. And in Sacred Pleasure, I said, uh, since sexuality is really so fundamental, it couldn't just be ignored or vilified, although vilifying sex and but vilifying woman as a temptress, which Jung does, by the way.
Yes,
The anima is either man's, uh, inspiration or his temptation. I mean, it's a dominator archetype. It's
mm,
simply relational. She has no agency. She exists only in relationship. For so it's very male centered, obviously. Uh, but the other thing that I said has happened as we try to get away from that, which people do get away from, sex has to be sanctified in marriage, or it can only be for procreation, or some bizarre thing, is the erotization of domination.
Mhm.
And we've all internalized this to varying degrees.
Yeah.
Uh, the notion of associating our sexuality as women and as men, or as anybody in between, because there have always been people in between, of course, regardless of the denial of this in this period of domination regression that we're seeing. Um, so we've all internalized this, and women have perpetuated it in themselves and in their relationship with men or with one another, really. Um, it
Yes.
and with themselves. So
Yes.
it's not about shame or blame, this work. It's
Exactly.
about really telling a new story about being human. And yes, as part of that, of being a sexual human.
Hmm. And this eroticization of domination, I can sense some people listening to us having this conversation thinking, oh, but that feels good. I like that erotic experience. But I think what you and I are both really highlighting here is that when that becomes the entire identity and context, socially and politically and economically, this has an impact which is to the detriment of both men and women.
Well, it starts with something that we're all used to, the so-called missionary position. The man always has to be on top.
Mm.
Um, this erotization of domination, but I make a distinction between pornography and erotica. And
Yes.
I think it's a very important distinction.
Mhm.
Erotica does not have uh, the really the subordination of one sexual partner uh, as a theme, whereas pornography, I mean, including so-called snuff pornography, which actually results in killing,
Right.
um, accustoms us to be sexually excited, both women and men, by domination.
Yes.
And that's very difficult. And of course, you are working with tantric yoga, trying to reclaim it. And I really think that that's so important because it's so, as we discussed, really so male-centered. The woman is just an instrument for man to achieve enlightenment. This is crazy.
Yes.
And
I agree.
it is taking an old practice. I mean, going back to the to my first book, drawing from this multidisciplinary, cross-cultural, transhistorical, including prehistory research, the chalice and the blade. It is really part of our heritage that had to be dealt with. And I think tantric yoga was part of that heritage. And it got very distorted.
Yes, yes, these sacred, secret teachings that really exist in maybe all cultures, indigenous cultures. Um, yes, and it took quite a lot to, in my reverence and initiated space through the male lineages, it took a lot to energetically kind of face this, am I allowed to bring through something actually even more ancient, and breaking through this sense of external authority, coming up against that to trust what was moving through me. And it's turned out to be an incredibly important movement for women around the world. And
I really commend you for your work. We are so used to shame and blame for sex, but only for women. For men, that's the one. And so much of the quote sexual revolution was women claiming sexual pleasure, but then it got co-opted really into this hookup culture, into this using the male model of the one night stand, which is neither for women nor men really satisfying, and at which it and lends itself so much to just wham bang, thank you, ma'am, and it, at best, perhaps in patriarchy, and at worst to pornography, to this erotization of domination and
yeah,
of violence.
yes. And do you see that, Dr. Riane, as a distortion of later waves of feminism or just the ongoing effect of patriarchy where women started to feel free to exploit themselves?
Well, so much. I have a friend, a mentoree, um, who Bree Mathers, who does a lot of work with really pointing out to young women how popular culture has, well, it's the same thing. It's the it's Cyrus Miley twerking
Mm,
around a fully clothed man,
yeah.
wearing very little, obviously, and being very sexually provocative. That's not liberation.
Yeah,
That
that's not full
is
womanhood. It's just not, is it?
no. Well, the first half, and I tried to get it into 2 volumes, but Harper and Row said no, they don't do 2 volumes, so we did one. But the first part is about the transformation of both sexuality and spirituality. And, the book, if I may, starts with candles, flowers, and wine, which are really, and I'm paraphrasing now, which are really the stuff of both romantic love, right?
Yeah,
As well as of our most sacred rites, candles, flowers, wine.
yeah,
And
true.
so the question was, why is there this commonality? And does it go to another view of sexuality? Because I think in this prehistoric era, when women and men, there was no matriarchy really, because, I mean, they're
Yes.
right about that. It was a partnership society, so, because the opposite of patriarchy is not matriarchy. That's just really the other side of the coin. It's partnership. And if
Rian,
you,
this is something I've been trying to say over and over, and it seems so difficult for people to take that in, exactly what you just said.
yeah,
Mm,
well, it's very hard for us because, there are polarities in nature. There's cold and hot. There is dark and light, but there are degrees, and you don't see a cold wanting to kill hot or vice versa. That
yes.
in-group versus out-group a thinking which is characteristic of domination systems. See, it started really with my being a feminist, suddenly waking up along with thousands of other women to wait a minute, this is not natural. And believe me, I used to think it was just the way things are. I mean, I'm an attorney, as you know, by training,
Mhm.
uh, and I've worked for a Beverly Hills entertainment law firm. And one day the head of the firm called me in to praise me. And you know what he said? He said, "You don't think like a woman." Now, he meant it as a compliment, which was pretty awful, but much worse was that I took it as a compliment.
I see, yes.
Yeah, so I know transformation is possible because
Yeah.
I've experienced it. But but we're all so traumatized by domination systems, you know. They're
Yes.
trauma factories, and the sexuality that we've internalized, this domination sexuality, um, is part of the traumatization, really.
Absolutely. And it seems like such a inbuilt fear within the context of the dominator model that a lot of people, as particularly men, seem to have, that if women really had their freedom, that they would automatically just dominate men the way that men have dominated women. But that's actually not the natural way. And it is really not what women want, what I want. And I mean, I grew up being oppressed and dominated by male authority figures. And my go-to was not to do it back. It was to realize that togetherness is the only way. And you language that so beautifully as the partnership model, and you've put so much years of research and development into explaining what that could actually look like. And I'd love that you've done that because you haven't just critiqued what was, you've actually built the technology, the platform ready for everyone to plug into.
Well, I think that our job, and especially in this time of regression globally, really, including in the United States, to domination, and yes, gender is a huge part of this, just huge. I mean, you know, whether it's the Taliban or fundamentalist Iran, both Eastern religious societies, or whether it is Western secular societies like Hitler's Germany, Nazi Germany, or rightist, right? Or Stalin's former leftist, former Soviet Union. I mean, women are simply deprived of power. There were no women in the Politburo, not one. Not
Yes.
one. They to their credit, there were some women in some of the lower leadership, but only brainwashed women, you know. And in the home, I mean, the femicide rate in today's Russia is horrendous. And you know, I really have to bring this out because I want people to go to it. We recently did a virtual summit um, on Peace Begins at Home. And I really urge you, it was on October 29. It had wonderful people. Uh, it had Ella Gandhi. It had the neuroscientist who worked with the Dalai Lama, explaining that we've been sold a bill of goods that supports naturally the domination system about human nature being evil, and therefore we need to be rigidly controlled through fear and force, as in God-fearing, right? Um, you know, a lot of remything. Our job in this regression, by the way, is to show that there is a better alternative. But the this virtual summit focus on the first of four cornerstones that we must shift from domination to partnership and its childhood and family. The second cornerstone is gender, and they're all interconnected. The third cornerstone is, of course, economics, because we don't reward care work, do we? Which
Yeah.
is supposed to be both Marx and Smith considered it women's work to be done for free by a woman in a male-controlled household, right? As was the norm in their time. And there's nothing about caring for nature. I mean, care is coded feminine.
Yeah.
And this is something that we really have to change. And of course, the fourth is story and language, and they're all interconnected. But the summit, to just finish with that, did start with how violence in families ripples out into, well, the normalization of violence and domination.
Yes. Is the virtual talk still available for people to see the replays?
Well, it will be available, and we're discussing how to make it available.
Great.
We need funding for um, the next virtual forum, which I hope will be next year on economics,
Mm.
because believe me, uh, the reward system is skewed. Well, both Smith and Marx did not value caring for people, starting at birth, or caring for nature, because as I said, caring is coded feminine. But the good news is that more and more men, I mean, we had two leaders in the men's movement, by the way, as part of the summit, Gary Barker, who's the president of Equimundo, and Jackson Katz, who has worked with football teams and military, etc. It is, we're talking about changing our story, changing our lives. And by the way, that too is available on our website. It's a 4-part course, very affordable, on where we are, how we got here. It foreshadows, because my latest book, as you know, Nurturing Our Humanity, draws heavily from neuroscience. So the third part foreshadows that. And the fourth part is the four cornerstones. And so I really highly recommend it if you go to our website, Center for Partnership. I think it is centerforpartnership.org. I
Yes, I'll put the links, no problem. And I really want people to follow up this episode if they don't already know who you are, Dr. Riane, to find you, to read your books, to tap into what your organization has available for everyone, because it's so incredibly important. And
well,
I think I already know your answer to this, but I want to ask you, do you see that shifting out of the dominator model to the partnership model in interpersonal, intimate relationship is essential for that to then proliferate on a wider social world power level?
absolutely. And I think that this is hard. This is hard. What we have to show people is that there is a better way.
Yes.
And the tantric yoga approach, which makes women equal partners, actually is in line with the research, isn't it? That if it is a partnership in sex, where it's the giving and receiving of mutual pleasure and
Exactly.
mutual enlightenment, that, see, in ancient times, it was associated, everything was associated with spirituality. I mean, that's the interesting thing, with interconnection.
Mm.
Um, if you think of the figure that is on the cover of the Chalice and the Blade, it's a bird goddess, and she's phallic but has breasts. So that's the interconnection between woman and man. But she's a bird goddess. So that's our interconnection with nature. And uh, two physicists last year received the Nobel Prize for showing that on the subatomic level, there is entanglement there
Mm,
is interconnection.
yes.
And we are all interconnected uh, to everyone. I mean, but these stories about in-group versus out-group thinking and acting, that's only about 5 to 10,000 years old, which really is a drop
Hmm.
in evolutionary time.
Hmm.
And we don't want to go back to any good old days, quote unquote. We want to
Yes.
make this work in a globalized society where we're all interconnected, not only by technologies of transportation and communication, but by technologies of destruction, like nuclear bombs, and more slowly by climate change. So,
Yeah.
to make a long story short, uh, the domination stories we've been told to live our lives by, whether religious or secular, they're not adaptive. And
Yeah.
we've got to change our story. And
Yes.
sex is something so natural in human life that we have to, it's like building an airplane where we're flying it.
Yeah. Yes, and a big part of the foundation of this project and of all of my work actually is about inviting people to this realization that when we can change our narrative, our the way that we're coded at the sexual imprint level, this quite effortlessly changes our mental outlook. This is something so core to humanity that if we can establish it right at that very primal level, that this automatically rearranges the distorted paradigms that have come into our psychology and our ways of relating. Um, yes, and it's not like women like yourself and I are saying that we want to go back to how things were in the goddess times, because that's a fear that a lot of men in particular have, that, oh, there'll be a matriarchy. And you and I both know that there was never really a dominating matriarchy. It wasn't like that.
Yeah,
But still, speaking for myself and obviously with your work, trying to say that even a benevolent matriarchy is not the answer all the way forward. It's not the language that we need. That there's a new story, there's a new mythology to be reimagined.
absolutely. And I think that, well, the regression that we're in right now is really in reaction to it's in times of massive technological and social disequilibrium. I draw from new theories like chaos theory, nonlinear dynamics, self-organizing theory. It's in these times that we can change what we value, our behavior, our thinking, our consciousness.
This message is for the ladies. If you want to fully get in touch with yourself and your body, enter the Tigress Path. Here you become an initiated woman living way beyond patriarchal sex, and also become a safe space for men to learn about patriarchy without the blame. Inside the Tigress Path, we have personal transformation and also professional accredited training options. The links to connect are below with this episode.
And that's exactly what happened. The regression to domination is in reaction to many social movements over the last 300 years when the Industrial Revolution went into high gear. Of course,
Mm.
now we are in a period of rapid change to the post-industrial era. I mean, we'll continue to have industry just as we continue to have farming, but it's how many people will be involved in it. That's the key, right? But to make a long story short, because I keep going into the larger picture, um, these movements that we're seeing, this domination regression, and yes, there are only two, women or men, and men have to be superior because that's how nature or God or whatever ordained it. Um, it's control over children, it's the four cornerstones. But the movements are, if you think about it, all challenge the same domination practice, okay?
Yes.
First was the Enlightenment challenging the so-called right of kings to rule over their subjects, right? Quote unquote. Then came the feminist movement challenging, again, the so-called divinely ordained right of men to rule over the women and children in the castles, military metaphor of their homes. Uh, the anti-racism movement, I mean, first the abolitionist movement, then the civil rights movement, the Black Lives Matter movement, you know, challenging again the so-called divinely ordained right of a quote superior race to rule over quote an inferior one,
Yeah.
all the way to the environmental movement, challenging man's once again divinely ordained dominion over nature, right? I mean, it's right there. And so are the peace movement, the social and economic justice movements, and it's all of these movements, but they being those who are trying to push us back, who are very traumatized, by the way,
Yes. Yeah.
starting in families, and sex is part of that traumatization for them, and really it relates all to these four cornerstones.
Yeah.
Um, which are so obvious to me if I look at the regression and I see what they're focusing on, how they're trying to change norms.
Yeah. Yeah.
We
And
live,
this regression that you're naming, I'm so happy you're naming it as that because it's so clearly what it is. And
yes,
it's like they get to do it or they're getting away with it currently because people don't know where we've come from. People don't know history. And so this is a moment to say, read Chalice and the Blade, everyone. Dr. Riane has already laid this out. You wrote it in the 80s, I believe.
it was published in 1986. And I'll tell you, it took me 10 years of research, of multidisciplinary, cross-cultural, as I said, transhistorical, including, well, it included the whole of humanity, both its male and female halves. Uh, it included the whole of our history, uh, it, including the millennia of our prehistory. And it included where we all live in our family and other intimate relations, for goodness sakes. And the second book, which is Sacred Pleasure, that I published, was on sex again, but sex as embedded and very different depending on the degree a culture or subculture orients to either domination or partnership. And it is always a matter of degree, by the way. That's why I introduced this partnership domination social scale. Um, and it is all very much related to trauma because domination systems are trauma factories.
Yes. And I let you know before we began this that I first read Chalice and the Blade in 1996. And it was a lot. I was in my first year of university at the time, and I'm so grateful, so grateful. It's been such a guiding light, and I've come back to it. But it took me quite a while longer to discover Sacred Pleasure, which is also a phenomenal offering to the world. Um, Dr. Riane, with this current time of this resurgence of a dominator model that unfortunately, it seems like so many people are unaware of or unconsciously aligning with. Um, how do you see, or where do you see? I know you've thought about this so much of how do we come as a talking about the larger collective scale right now, how does humanity come towards implementing a partnership model? What do you see that that would take collectively for us?
It takes a lot of creativity, but it takes, first of all, a re-examination of our stories. And I have to confess, I always like take the Odyssey, right? I always knew because all they're very powerful female figures in the Odyssey, but they're vilified as monsters,
Mm.
or they're just sexual objects for the hero, Odysseus. And who is Odysseus? He is the hero as killer. That's so I didn't get that. Oh, and of course Penelope is a clue. He gets his power through Penelope, his wife. It goes back to the hymns of Inanna, which are part of sacred pleasure, as you know, that I talk about them, and how so much of what has happened to us is remything, really. And so we need to remyth.
Yes.
I mean, this tell a different story, for goodness sakes.
Yes. And
Uh,
when that remything comes to intimate relating between man and woman, how how would you like to summarize this remything? How could that story be told now at this point in time?
well, I think sacred pleasure tells the story.
It does.
It tells how sexuality was once associated with spirituality. Uh, what we today call even religion, if there was such a thing. I mean, people saw our interconnection in that time, like the figure that the prehistoric bird goddess that I mentioned, that um, really symbolizes, well, the chalice and the blade are two symbols of power.
Yes.
The power in domination system, which is basically power over. And the fact that power over has entered our lexicon is an interesting trend towards partnership,
Mhm.
isn't it? But we are a little more confused about the other power, the chalice power, because it isn't only power with, it is power to creative, really creative, the power to nurture life rather than to take life, like the blade is.
Yeah.
Um, a lot of remissing. And of course, you ask me, what do we do? We have to convince people, number one, that there is a better alternative
Mhm.
and that it is not matriarchy, it is partnership.
Mhm.
And that we have to really change the stereotypes for both feminine and masculine.
Yes. And in
And
terms of changing those stereotypes, if we look at one at a time, if we focus on men and women, what would you say to the women to be part of this new story, myth, narrative moving forward in this evolutionary way?
the possibility and probability of a partnership resurgence is based on trusting human nature, even our will to survive at this point, because domination systems are not adaptive, as I said. They are taking us either through nuclear weaponry or through um, climate change more slowly to an evolutionary dead end for our species. Cockroaches will probably make it, but humans won't. Um, so, as I wrote in The Chalice and the Blade, and really reiterated in my most recent book, in Nurturing Our Humanity, which, as I said, draws heavily from neuroscience, we have to reclaim nothing less than our true human nature and the caring for connection. It's really is a craving that humans have, don't they? And
Mm.
sex is one way that the mystical experience of religions or mystical parts of religions, uh, it really is the orgasmic experience that they have in common. So
Yes.
I don't think it is strange that spirituality and sexuality were once connected.
Yes. Oh, they can't be disconnected in truth. They are one. They're the
Yeah.
the both ends of who and what we are. And so if I'm to highlight or reflect part of what you shared for women there, Riane, around the trust. So on a personal, individual level, the trauma healing that it takes to feel that trust and safety in connection again, to be able to have true partnership.
Well, it really is a very important part of our lives
Yes.
and for a long, long time.
Yes.
And we have to learn to honor our bodies because it's the only one we get issued.
Yeah.
And we have to rethink and reconceptualize uh, what human nature really is.
Yes. And how
And
about for the men that want to, or, are eventually moving towards this also being part of the evolution into the partnership model? Um, what do you see that men need to be able to shift into that for themselves?
well, I think they need both the carrot and the what is the other one? They need to understand that they don't have it so good in domination systems, first of all.
Yeah.
That yes, they get the sop of being, the head of the household, so to speak, and to being superior, quote unquote, to
Yeah.
women. But they are part of the domination hierarchy and they have to give nothing less than their
Mm.
very life, because some guy on top, like a Putin, wants more real estate.
Yes, yes. So for the
So,
men realizing that they are being used and utilized, their very lives are being used as a sacrifice for this dominator model that's not in their favor. So to be able to see through maybe the temporary sense of superiority or entitlement that they are born into in this world and be able to see through that to how it's to their own detriment for a start.
well, that's one thing, but we also need to uh, tell men that they get rewards of pleasure for caring. Love used to, and caring are coded feminine, right? But they're human.
Yes.
And we all want it, we all need it. And we, I mean, it is so strange, this bill of goods, that the eroticization of domination has taught, brainwashed both women and men in. So we have a lot of unlearning and relearning
Yes.
ahead of us, but it is a tremendous adventure.
I
And
agree.
one of the things that I feel very strongly about is creativity. Creativity. It is so just about everything around us. I mean, not just the table or the window or the books or the chair, but our cultures, our human creations, our economies, our sexuality, frankly, is a distortion. And it takes some work to
Yes,
leave that behind.
yes. So
Yeah.
there's inner work that no one is exempt from uh, being able to face so that we can move humanity forward together. Yes.
And it's a tremendous adventure, and we humans are equipped with so much curiosity and so much creativity. I have faith in that,
Mhm, mhm.
in that human capacity
Yes.
um, for love, for caring. And it is only the traumas of domination. You know, I remember being in a park a long time ago and listening to a child wailing, just crying. And then I heard a man's voice saying, and I'm going to keep hitting you until you stop crying.
Oh,
Boys, don't cry. So what's done to men, the dehumanization, the stripping of men of their capacity, and it's enormous, it's huge. We see it, you know, in all the men who are today diapering and feeding babies and getting endorphins, rewards of chemicals that give us pleasure for caring for another, even for a pet, we get those. I mean,
yes.
Um, so
Absolutely.
it's the carrot and the stick. It's the carrot
Okay.
and the stick.
So for men,
Show
the
people,
rewards of caring.
show people how, I mean, there are women who feel that this is the inevitable order. And really, religion has been part of this and has a very, very, the price for well, like Christianity, where only the males are divine, the Father and the Son, and the Mother of God is the only figure that is mortal. I mean, come on. There's
Absolutely.
something wrong with that story.
There's something very wrong about that story. And for the people that still have this implanted into their psyche, Rianne, where they think that this has come from the authority, you know, these Abrahamic religions telling them these stories, and they don't even realize how those stories are older and got co-opted, corrupted and changed to become the dominant narrative that everything is kind of based on in the dominator model. What could you say in a brief way to people that haven't put all those dots together yet, like you have?
Well, we need to put the dots together. First thing, we need to connect the dots. And yeah, I mean, you know, the hip bone is connected to the knee bone and to the ankle bone. I mean, in the human body, we see connectivity. We see connectivity in nature. You know, my deceased second husband, who was amazing, David Loy,
Oh,
Loye. He, he reclaimed the story of Darwin, showing in his books, like in Rediscovering Darwin, that Darwin has been misinterpreted as this 800-pound gorilla for the domination system, really. And by the way, uh, the partnership is so much more pleasurable. I mean, my first marriage was very difficult because we both tried to fit in to these domination stereotypes, and I really tried to be the
right.
little woman behind, right? The
I see.
great man, the successful man, and it failed us both. And my second marriage, and I was afraid of getting married. I lived with David for some time. We were together for 45 years. They were the best years of my life. we're partners in everything.
That's so beautiful. So you've personally lived the dominator model in partnership and the true partnership model in your relationship. That's amazing.
I mean, we have to use every means we have to show that partnership is just plain more pleasurable to everybody.
Yes.
And not only sexually, like Masters and Johnson showed, and that many studies have showed, that if both partners, if it's the giving and receiving of mutuality, of mutual pleasure,
Yes.
um, everybody gets more pleasure. It
Yes.
is really
Yes.
an amazing thing.
What,
But
how could it be more sustainable than that? Mutual pleasure just keeps amplifying. It just keeps growing. It's so life-giving, isn't it? And
and we're almost at the end of our hour. So I want to say, keep on your good work. Keep telling people about sexuality is a human-made practice, really. And it is very different in the context of domination system and partnership systems. And it's related to everything, to our economic reward system, to our family. I mean, what do children learn if they live in a household where a woman, right, who cares for them, who cares for everyone's health, who does the caring, who, you know, is considered subordinate to the men? They internalize, and this is something that people don't get, they internalize a template for equating difference, beginning with the difference in the two human forms that we have, men and women, with either, a racial, with either superiority or inferiority, with dominating or being dominated, with being served or serving. And that goes to racial racism, to anti-Semitism, I mean, to all the ugly isms, really.
mm,
And it is in group versus out. It's the basis, really, for in group versus out group thinking.
yes, yes. And this is where the language of the dominator model is so important because it is humans in nature. It is racism. It is not just a man-woman thing.
It's everything.
Yeah.
It's everything, but it really gender and how the roles and relations of the two basic halves of humanity and everybody in between are structured. That is fundamental.
Mhm.
So kudos on your work, and maybe you can write me more about what led you to it, because you're in London, aren't you?
No, I'm actually in Bali, Indonesia, on the other side of the world.
Bali, my goodness.
Dr. Riane Eisler, you are a treasure. You are a legend. Thank you so much for coming and being part of this conversation. And it's being offered as a collaborative, collective inquiry so that it can be a discovery together. And so in a way, the partnership model is here, even in this approach. And I want to thank you for your leadership as a true evolutionary in this world. And, I kind of wish we could figure out a way to extend your lifespan.
Oh my goodness. Well, I thank you for this opportunity to talk to women and hopefully also men uh, about human nature.
Yes, and the faith, restoring the faith in human nature, the beauty and simplicity of this message is the note we will leave this on because that's exactly the energy that we need with the current chaos going on. So, thank you for bringing that beauty and simplicity and wisdom into this space. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Whenever I'm out socially and a friend asks, Devashi, how can I get my partner into this exploration about living beyond patriarchal sex? My answer is exactly what I've put down in the show notes for you with this episode. And if you are willing to be the spell breaker of your bloodline and have the uninhibited pulse of Eros guiding you through life, beyond the matrix into the fullness of your divine sovereignty, then keep tuning in to these weekly episodes and share it with your friends. And may we all be free from suffering.